Islip station is one that I've been wanting to visit for quite a while and has a bit of an interesting potted history. I've mentioned before about the Varsity line in my Universal Studios and Aylesbury videos, which was a railway line that connected the two major university cities of England together, Oxford and Cambridge. And this section of the line opened back in 1850. However, much of the route, including this section, closed back in 1967. However, it was not the end of the line, no pun intended, for this railway. I mean, of course, it exists today. It came back as a little branch line in 1987 from Oxford to Bicester Town, with Islip Station being the only intermediate station, opening 2 years later in 1989. However, it closed yet again in 2014, but this time it was to allow for upgrade work to take place. A second platform was installed here, and you saw the beginning of through services towards London Marylebone, with Bicester Town being renamed to Bicester Village. The line closed in 2014 to allow the upgrade works to be completed and reopened in 2015. And they are working on restoring the railway all the way through to Cambridge, with the section through to Bedford looking like it might open next year. I can't seem to find a timetable, and my camera is interlacing with the dot matrix screen, which makes it quite hard to read. But what I wanted to say is that despite the upgrade works, the service here at Islip isn't the best. It's not the most frequent, with services running every 2 hours. The other stations on this line get a half-hourly service, whilst Islip only gets one every 2 hours. It would be nice to see if perhaps it would get an hourly service at least at some point. And I like there's an older sign here that I think is come from the old station when it was just a single platform, when it was not even a Great Western Railway, a first Great Western branch line between Oxford and Bicester. It's understandable though why Islip doesn't have the most frequent service, because it is just a tiny little village. It is really cute though, but perhaps if it did have more of a service, we would see an influx in passenger numbers. Islip was a station that I wanted to visit 5 years ago on my first trip to Oxford because of the weirdness of the station. However, I didn't exactly have the time to do so because of the 2-hourly service, so I instead went and explored Bicester Village station instead, and the area around there, which is a place which I would like to go back to. What I did instead that day was visit another awkward station. If you think Islip had a bad service, wait until you hear about Coombe, which has one service a day in each direction. I went there instead of Islip. But I'm glad I've now come and done Islip too. And by coming here, it allows me to do a walk, starting off here, crossing over the River Ray. My last walk was inspired by the Saturday Walkers Club, which have a website that lists several hundred walks you could do that are mainly down in the southeast of England. And I did their Stonegate circular walk, although I didn't do the actual circular version. I instead ended at a place called Etchingham. But I'm doing the same exact thing today. They have an Islip circular walk, but I'm not going to come back and finish here at Islip. I'm going to take an alternative route that they suggest to a different station, and that's mainly because of the infrequent services. I don't want to end up potentially having a 2-hour wait for a train, but also it allows me to visit another station that I wouldn't otherwise. So let's do this. On my Stonegate walk, I came across a lot of cows, but I hardly came across horses at all. So it's nice to start off with a field of them here, near to Islip. They look quite sad though. They're not up to much. As nice as little villages like Islip are, there are a lot of cars that pass through them on the narrow streets, and so it could be quite annoying to walk through sometimes. So I'm kind of glad that I'm away from it and I'm now out into the fields. Looking back towards the church at Islip there, we have just started off with a long straight path of just fields at the beginning, which is really nice. And we're even on the Oxfordshire way, long distance footpath. Thank God the leaf moved out the way there so you could see it. I don't like to compare it, but I think I am liking the countryside more on this Islip walk than I did the Stonegate walk. Just fantastic views so early on. Really enjoying this. A mile in and it seems like I'm coming off of the Oxfordshire way because I'm turning right here. Almost impossible to spot public footpath sign. Wait, actually, where is the pub? There it is. That's impossible to spot. It's lucky I knew I was turning here and I saw the opening. Back out into another field. Oh, we've been reunited with the Oxfordshire way. That just stuck to the country road, it seemed, rather than the field which I took. I think I took the better way. I'm also loving these cottages, by the way. There is a possibility immediately, though, we are leaving it behind because I think it's carrying on straight there whilst I turn right into another field because this sign does not mention the Oxfordshire way. Sheep as well. I came across a lot on my Stonegate walk. Not black sheep, though. I thought from a distance they were cows in this field. I'm surprised you two aren't scared of me. You've let me get very close. Oh, maybe I was still on the Oxfordshire way. Don't know why there was no sign pointing it in the direction I went, but I am back on the country road. I could have stuck to it the entire time, but it's much better to take the field paths, isn't it? But I do have to stick to it now, even though it is just a dead-end road, because it's going to lead me to my next location. And I've now made it in to a nature reserve. This is RSPB Otmoor. And it's very wetlandy. I'm not seeing much of the wetlands because I'm on this path which has bushes on either side, but that's okay because it's still a nice path to take and it does still feel different than the fields which I've been walking. I've just walked past this duck though, which wasn't even startled by me. I didn't even realise that I had walked past it at first. The animals of Oxfordshire seem to be quite brave. Found a lookout spot, a hide. My voice is probably quite echoey here, which offers some fantastic views out across the wetlands. And there's no one else here. I've got the place to myself, so I'm going to take a few minutes to sit down, take in the view and the peace and quiet, because it is really pleasant. What a beautiful location though. I'm glad that the M40, which was scheduled to come through here in the 1980s, never happened. Well, I am leaving RSPB Otmoor Nature Reserve now, and what a lovely place it was to visit. I'm as far east as I'm going to be on this walk because this is where the Islip circular route starts to loop back around. And I noticed on OS maps, north/northeast of here, it is labelled as a danger area, and that made me wonder maybe it's military land. But then I saw this sign over here which does indeed tell me that it is a military firing range. So yeah, I won't be heading in here. I'm instead going to take the route of an old Roman road down into the village of Beckley. This seems to be a delightful first impression of Beckley. I've seen the Oxfordshire way up there again. I thought we'd left that behind. I guess not. I'm using the Abingdon Arms pub here to finally, once and for all, figure out where the Oxfordshire way goes because it has a map. So, there it is. That's the path we took from Islip. Noak is where we passed underneath on the country road, and then we went on top of that country road, and then we went up that white trail into the RSPB land, which the Oxfordshire way does not do, as it went this way into Beckley instead. And now we're completely coming off it as it's making its way towards the unfortunately named Horton cum Studley. I've not seen this before. Beckley here has used one of their old red telephone boxes and turned it into an art box. There is indeed a painting of a tiger in there. That's cool. Wow, what a fantastic view looking forwards. It's a bit more of a cloudier day than I was expecting, which is nice to be honest, because that means it's not as warm as my Stonegate walk was. I got to cut across this common now, where there's a lot of ponies in here, so I'm hoping they don't mind me passing through. They don't seem like they do. Beautiful vantage point from these meadows here, looking back towards the wetlands over there as well. Seems I might be on that part of the Oxfordshire way when it skips out the RSPB Otmoor land. I mean, I was always going to encounter it a few times if this is a circular walk today. But what I'm also on is the CPRE Oxford Greenbelt Way, which is taking me across this meadow. This might be the only bit of the walk that's a little bit hairy because I've got to walk along a B road for this next section. This is the same road that's just come south from Islip. Ah, I've actually been graced with a large gap in cars. There was a lot passing when I came out of that footpath. There's none now. There'll be in a moment as soon as I stop recording there. Oh yeah, there's one. Yep, I see one in the horizon. Okay, well I'm glad to have found my footpath. This is going to take me around the bottom of Drun's Hill. Drun's Hill is a lot less significant than I thought it was going to be. That's just a slight dip in the landscape. Especially as it was forcing me to go all the way around it. I thought it was going to be a huge hill that I couldn't go across. There are two ways to identify if you've come across a village on one of these countryside walks, apart from houses, of course. One is a village sign, which this place does not have, or the second is a church. I've come across a couple of churches today. I made sure to go and have a look at Beckley's one earlier too. I thought I'd come in and have a look at the church because there was a notice saying that it was always open. I do like it in here because of how peaceful it is. That was really nice in there. If you ever pass by the church here in Wood Eaton, go in and have a look and see if you can spot my name on the visitors book. And then ignore where I initially put the wrong date. I just passed by a manor house back there, and now I've come across a folly, which were both built at the same time by someone called John Wayland in 1775. And I'm on to what is pretty much my final pathway now, heading all the way west for the last couple of miles. I've reached the point where the Islip circular walk takes a different route to what we're doing. I'm turning left. If I was to head back to Islip, I would turn right and walk alongside this field and also beside the River Cherwell, which is just down there. Or perhaps not. This is actually a completely dried out brook. I know that this was a kind of small branch of the Cherwell. We're going to cross the main Cherwell in a minute once we get across this field. There we go. That is much more like a river. Here it is, the River Cherwell. It's almost a shame that I'm not walking this back up towards Islip. The river we saw at the beginning is actually a tributary of this Cherwell. They meet up just outside of the village. But I'm continuing west across the fields to the other station. See, I knew it was a more miserable day than I thought. It started spitting with rain, even when it said there's 0% chance of rain right now. This has just made the final part of this walk very unusual to be walking across the fields in this sort of weather. I've made it to not Islip station but Oxford Parkway, which is a brand new station that opened when the line reopened in 2015 and initially acted as the terminus before trains ran through to Oxford the following year in 2016. There was a previous station here far back in the day from 1905 to 1926, but even that had a short closure from 1917 to 1919, and it was called Oxford Road Halt. The new station is quite self-explanatory in the name, serves a giant car park, a park park and ride where people can park their car and get on the train either into Oxford or to anywhere else. It also does serve the local area as well, places like Cutteslowe, which I saw on the footpath sign about 2¼ miles away. And the station itself was even going to be called Water Eaton Parkway in the planning stages, another local area that's nearby. And now that I'm here, that means I have done all of the stations on this little branch to Oxford. I mentioned earlier how I had gone to Bicester Village before, and I of course have gone to Oxford. In fact, I went to Oxford last year on a dedicated city centre walk and also up the River Thames. I'll flash some images up on screen because I didn't make videos back then. However, it's funny that I mentioned that because, well, I had enough time before my train this morning that I thought I'd walk down the road and have a quick look at Oxford Castle and Prison, which is where I came to on my first visit to Oxford and my walk last year. And I like that they currently have a lot of ox sculptures around the city centre, playing into the name. Before I go, I want to leave you with a quick travel tip. Because you can now get onto this branch or to Oxford from 2 different London termini, Marylebone or Paddington, there's an array of tickets which you can purchase. If you bought a return ticket from London Paddington, for example, with railcard discount, it will be £22. However, in a lot of scenarios, if you buy a ticket from the extremity of the Oyster Zone out of Paddington, that would be West Drayton, it could end up being cheaper, and in this scenario it is. If you bought a return ticket from West Drayton to Islip, it would be £16.85. However, if you bought your ticket from Southall, for some reason, even though it's further away from Islip, it is £15.90. And if you buy a ticket on the day, you are allowed to start your journey anywhere you like along the route. So if you live at West Drayton, it would actually be worth buying the Southall ticket because you've saved yourself money. There is also a £16.85 ticket from Southall, which allows you to travel into London Paddington and then get a fast train out. Using that same theory of starting a journey anywhere along the route, if you buy a Southall to Islip via Paddington ticket, you end up saving yourself money because you just start the journey at Paddington rather than buy a ticket from Paddington. So that's exactly what I did. Rather than pay £22 for a Paddington to Islip return, I paid £16.85 for a Southall to Islip return, but just started my journey at London Paddington. Made it to Oxford off of a train that did actually stop at Islip. And I like this old sign here, welcome to Oxford, the city of learning and culture. It still has the old First Great Western logo, as well as a little logo for some of the lines, the Oxford Canal and the Bicester link. And I await my trains back to London. The first train is actually a cross-country Voyager, which doesn't go London, so I have to change at Reading. I've only been on one of these before, and that was from Leamington Spa to Reading via Oxford. But I was intending to travel to London Marylebone. However, the train was cancelled due to a fault along the line, so I made an alternative plan to head into London Paddington. This will be my first intended cross-country Voyager journey, and I've heard that people don't really like these trains too much. Some people have strong opinions on how much they hate them for some reason. But once I get off the train, I will make my way to London Paddington, and I will not be going to Southall. I've learnt from that lookout spot that I was in that this area of Otmoor inspired some novels potentially. I was blowing a fly off my arm.